A single click. You stared at your reflection, but it wasn't you. It was the hollow echo of every apology they never meant. In that moment, the power slipped through your fingers like smoke, and you felt the weight of every dismissal, every shrug, every "maybe you're overthinking it." You realized that apologies don't restore what's broken. They merely serve the ego of the one who utters them. You had been waiting for their admission of guilt, their sign of remorse, and you understood for the first time that you would wait forever. They needed you reactive. They thrived on the clench of your jaw, the tremor in your voice, the flicker of desperation in your eyes. Without it, they were exposed, and so they left silence in the space where words should have been, safe in the knowledge that you would chase after their truth. But tonight, under the harsh white wash of your bathroom light, you chose silence. You remember the betrayal in granular detail, the look in their eyes as they lied, the curve of their lips rehearsing innocence. You replayed it until every fragment of memory burned, and then, instead of pleading for answers, you exhaled. You saw them not as a lover, a friend, or a confidant, but as a player on a board you never agreed to join. The rules were theirs, written in the ink of your trust. And trust, you realized, is the easiest thing to weaponize. In that damp mirror, you made your pact. Never again would you hand over your center of gravity to someone who valued your apology more than your presence. You would learn to stand so still that the storms around you would break themselves upon your unyielding calm. You would become the fortress that no whisper could breach. If you felt the sting of an apology offered as performance, if you recognized the helpless search for validation in someone else's eyes, lean in, subscribe and comment with the moment you decided you'd had enough. This is where the transformation begins. They watched you bend until your backbone cracked, testing your edges with every word left unsaid. They believed silence was your weakness, the void where you'd scramble for meaning, for mercy, for any sign they cared. But in the stillness, you found gravity. In the pause between their question and your answer, you discovered the power to let them tumble into uncertainty. Remember the last conversation, how they leaned forward, expecting the familiar tremor in your voice, the quick apology that would seal the rupture between you. They rehearsed their lines, calibrated their tone, confident you'd deliver the reaction they craved. But you sat there, lips closed, heartbeat measured, as if you were carved from marble and impervious to their theatrics. You felt them freeze, recalibrating. They'd never prepared for your refusal to play. In that moment, you assented, not by raising your voice, not by recounting the wounds they left behind, but by withdrawing the oxygen from the room. Presence is not noise. Presence is the cold clarity that forces them to confront the vacancy they created. They thought they owned your space, your thoughts, your need for closure, but with every deliberate breath, you reclaimed territory they never earned. They called you distant. They accused you of being cold. They whispered it behind your back. She's unreachable. He's numb. But you knew the truth. They had grown too comfortable in your fire. Their lies were fueled by the furnace of your outrage. Take away the fuel, and the flames retreat. You learned to measure your distance with the same precision a surgeon uses a scalpel every millimeter critical. Too far, and they forget you exist. Too close, and they can strike. You mastered the space where you hover just beyond their reach, and that space became your dominion. It wasn't spite, it was strategy. You observed their reactions as though you were watching prey in a high-stakes hunt. Their pupils dilated when you shifted your stance. Their scalp pricked when your expression remained blank. You studied the tremor in their throat when they realized your silence was not uncertainty, it was armor. And with that knowledge, you planted the seeds of doubt in their mind. If I can't break you, who am I? They needed your vulnerability. They fed on the quick flash of regret in your gaze. They thrived when your defenses collapsed. But as you held the barrier firm, you noticed the toll it took on them. Their words lost conviction. Their insults rang hollow. Without your emotional yield, they became uncertain, stumbling over the lies they had rehearsed 1,000 times. You became the mirror they feared, reflecting back the insecurity they cultivated in you. You don't need to tell them what they did. They already know. Every glance they steal across the room carries the weight of unspoken guilt. Their apologies are hunting dogs chasing a phantom. You let them bay until they collapse with exhaustion. Your silence is the cage they built, and now they pace inside it, powerless to escape. This is not about cruelty. It is about reclamation. Every moment you resisted the urge to fill the void with excuses, explanations, or pleas, you tightened the screws on your own resilience. You stopped being a target and started being the gauntlet. They broke themselves against your stillness. If you have ever watched someone's confidence fracture because you refused to validate their narrative, you know the intoxicating discipline of detachment. You know that real power doesn't announce itself in roars. It whispers in the quiet of your resolve. And now, as you lean back, as you exhale with the weight of unspoken truths, you feel the surge of unshakable calm. They hear your footsteps echo before you arrive. They sense the cold breeze in the room before the door opens. They remember the unblinking stare that left them exposed. And in that memory, they carry the warning: never mistake silence for weakness. They tried to ambush you with charm, thinking a grin and a casual touch would dissolve the barrier you erected. But you met them with a gaze so still it swallowed their gestures whole. They leaned in, voice soft as velvet, hoping to catch you off guard. They believed you could still be amused, still be flattered, still be disarmed. But you remained impassive, a statue chiseling away at their confidence with each unblinking second. They recoiled, hunting for the familiar spark in your eyes, the sign that you were human. They found nothing but ice. In the echo of that silence, you heard your own heartbeat, steady, deliberate, unashamed. You felt the tension coil in your chest, not as panic, but as sharpened awareness. This was your body reclaiming territory it once surrendered. Every muscle stood at attention, a tacit warning. Do not mistake restraint for fear. They skirted the edges of your persona as though navigating a minefield. One wrong step, and they would unleash the explosion of consequences you refused to reveal. They tried verbal feints, teasing questions wrapped in concern. Are you okay? You seem distant. What's on your mind? But you responded with nothing. A calculated absence that turned their words back on themselves. You didn't concede by answering. You asserted by withholding. They stumbled over their sincerity, realizing that their inquiries were empty echoes bouncing off an unbreakable wall. They sensed the shift. Your silence had become a weapon more precise than the sharpest accusation. In that encounter, you discovered a paradox. Vulnerability is not the absence of armor, but the refusal to lower it. They mistook openness for weakness, but you inverted the equation. You let them see the outline of your resolve before you revealed its depth. They felt exposed, naked in their own schemes, and for the first time, they saw the cost of their manipulation etched in the unyielding lines of your expression. You didn't need to speak of betrayal. Betrayal was the air they breathed. They inhaled guilt with every breath, suffocating on the gravity of their own actions, and you watched as they gasped, searching for relief that would not come. Their mind raced. Why won't they break? They had rehearsed your collapse. They had studied your pressure points, yet here you were, an immovable object, meeting them in the void of your indifference. As they turned away, deflated, you felt a quiet triumph, not loud, but absolute. You had stripped away the illusions they wove around your psyche, the notion that you needed permission to exist on your own terms. You reclaimed the narrative by refusing to participate in their performance. You became the silent author of your fate, writing every chapter with the weight of your presence and the absence of needless words. They'll speak of you now in muted tones, attributing your detachment to something pathological, something to be fixed. Let them. In their desperation to decode your silence, they'll replay every interaction, searching for the fracture they created and couldn't exploit. They will become prisoners of your stillness, haunted by the reflection of their own inadequacy. And you move forward carrying nothing but the echo of your own strength. You taught them a lesson without uttering a single lesson. You redefined respect by refusing to beg for it. You turned emotional scarcity into your strongest currency. Their apologies will gather dust. Their explanations will rot in the void you left behind. You are the calm at the heart of the storm, a presence so disciplined that chaos cannot breach your walls. You felt the walls close in when they questioned your absence, as though your restraint threatened the fragile scaffold of their world. Every time you withheld a reaction, they lost another brick of certainty. You watched the panic ripple through their features, a silent aftershock of walls crumbling beneath the weight of your detachment. In that displacement, you realized chaos is their default state. Calm is your rebellion. They needed the tempest of your emotions to masquerade as victory. When you refused to dance in their storm, they flailed, arms slicing through thin air, desperate to conjure a gale. Their fury was a mirror to your stillness, each flare of anger a confirmation of your control. You observed them from the eye of a hurricane you'd summoned without moving, collecting data on their breaking points, noting the tremor in their voice when dominance slipped from their grasp. You once believed that strength was measured in declarations and displays. The louder the claim, the deeper the conviction. But you learned that true power is surgical, a precise incision in their assumptions, leaving no room for recovery. You spoke with glances calibrated to expose the seams in their confidence. Your gestures were minimal, a tilted eyebrow, a slight lean back, enough to redirect the flood of their own words into a dead end. They pursued you like a wounded animal, convinced that persistence would erode your armor. Instead, their tenacity only forged it stronger. In the theater of human interaction, they played the lead, casting you as the unsuspecting foil. But you rewrote the script by removing yourself. Their lines fell flat in the absence of your expected cues. You traced the outline of their discomfort, invisible ink on a page, revealing the narrative they never intended you to read. They fumbled for new dialogue, new tactics, but the stage was yours now, silent, unyielding, unavoidable. They tried to reclaim control with proximity hovering too close, invading your personal space like a predator, testing the boundaries of prey. But you adapted. You learned the geometry of distance, how to angle your body so that their inertia carried them forward, while you remained rooted. With each failed advance, they recoiled, uncertain where the new line had been drawn. You mastered the invisible perimeter between engagement and expiration, and that perimeter became your fortress. Their apologies when they came were feeble attempts to reset the power dynamic. They offered hollow phrases like currency devalued by inflation. You let their words loop unanswered, a broken record spinning in the silence you curated. You didn't deign to correct them, to point out their failures or dissect their motives. You simply watched as the weight of their own empty promises sank them beneath the surface of their self-deceit. This process wasn't about inflicting pain. It was about reclaiming your sovereignty. Every moment you sat without reaction, you reclaimed a piece of yourself they had stolen through guilt and expectation. You excavated the bedrock of your identity, chiseling away the layers of concession until only the raw essence remained. Their discomfort was collateral damage, evidence of your emergence as something they could no longer predict or manipulate. In the aftermath of each encounter, you carried their uncertainty like a relic of conquest. You didn't broadcast your achievement. You wore it in the measured cadence of your breathing, in the unhurried pace of your movements. You reclaimed the luxury of time, sensing how they shrank when they saw your calm was not a pause, but a permanent state. They remembered the old you, the one who trembled at their indifference. Now they faced the unrecognizable force that required no validation. You are no longer the reaction to their impulse. You are the progenitor of your own narrative. You stand at the fulcrum between what was and what must become. And in the stillness that follows, you feel the tremor of power coalescing into unassailable resolve. You sensed the shift before they spoke, the weight of their doubt settling into the room like a second shadow. They circled you, searching for any tremor in your conviction, a loose thread they could pull to unravel the fortress you'd built. But you stood immovable, as though your limbs were iron, and your mind a blade honed by cold intent. They fired questions like arrows, each aimed at the cracks they assumed must exist, and each arrow snapped against an invisible shield. In their scramble for control, they revealed their own desperation. Their voice wavered when they asked for the person you had been before you learned to wield silence. They craved the echo of your old weakness, the response that once defined you. But you gave them nothing. Your face remained a mask of calm calculation, eyes flicking only to measure their next move. Their uncertainty fed your resolve, each hesitation in their speech, a reminder that you no longer answered to anyone but yourself. They remembered the day you knelt before them, head bowed in apology. They basked in the arrogance of your submission, believing it was proof of their dominance. But they forgot one truth. Iron tempers under pressure become steel. In the silence you cultivated, in the void you refused to fill, you transformed. You ceased to be the pliable instrument of their whims and became the conductor of your own orchestra, every note deliberate, every rest pregnant with meaning. When they tried to fracture you with guilt, you simply stepped back, observed their struggle, and refused to engage. You watched as their rehearsed guilt collapsed into incoherence. They fumbled for a trophy, some shred of regret you would memorialize. They hungered for your confession, your concession, your collapse. Yet you stood unwavering, a testament to the power of withholding. Their pleas sounded hollow, like wind rattling through an empty cage. You understood then. Vulnerability exploited is weakness. Vulnerability controlled is power. You chose when to lower your guard and to whom. And in that choice, you reclaimed your essence. You became a strategist of emotion, no longer at the mercy of their tide. You orchestrated the ebb and flow of interaction so that you dictated the terms, selecting what to reveal, when to speak, and how long to remain silent. Their final attempt was a plea for collaboration, for a return to the dance they once led. They offered truce, compromise, as if you'd step back into the pattern you broke. But you knew compromise is the grease that keeps their gears turning. You refused. You did not counter with threats or ultimatums. You countered with absence. You let them imagine your reaction, fill the void with their own fears. And that fear was your victory. Now, when you meet their gaze, you see the flicker of recognition. They're no longer facing the person they once manipulated. They're facing the architect of their own unraveling. You are the silence that shapes chaos, the stillness that directs storms. You have become an unspoken warning, a living testament to the potency of detachment. They believed they had one move left, an appeal to your compassion, a last-ditch confession meant to fracture the steel in your veins. They stepped forward, hands open, voice trembling as they conjured whatever regret they could muster. You watched them assemble their remorse like an amateur craftsman hoping to fool a connoisseur, and you felt only the chill of detachment. Their confession hung in the air, light as smoke, and you let it drift, unclaimed. In that moment, you understood the final lesson. Power lies not in the words you deliver, but in the ones you refuse. They expected a response, a nod, a softening, the flicker of doubt that once flicked through your eyes. When you offered nothing, they saw their own vulnerability magnified, like sunlight striking flint. Their regret became a mirror, reflecting the hollow engines of their manipulation. They saw themselves for what they were and recoiled. They tried to anchor you with shared history, invoking names of places you two once claimed as sacred, retracing footsteps they hoped you'd follow. But you kept your gaze forward, unmoved by nostalgia. History is a graveyard where old versions of yourself lie buried under the weight of their lies. You refused to exhume the past, to feed the ghosts of old wounds. Instead, you pressed on with unswerving clarity, unbound by the crumbs of memory they scattered behind you. As their pleas dwindled into silence, you felt the final shards of their power fracture and fall away. You had disarmed their arsenal of guilt, of apology, of manufactured intimacy. In your wake, they were left confronting the truth they'd hidden. Your autonomy was never theirs to grant. You moved through the world unshackled, carrying only the echo of their defeat in the hollow of your chest. Yet this transformation was not marked by fanfare. There was no triumphant roar, no proclamation of victory. Instead, you discovered a subtler triumph in the rhythm of your own breathing, in the quiet assurance that no one could unsettle you again. You sensed the soft hum of your resolve resonating through your limbs, a frequency they could neither tune into nor distort. This was your dominion, a realm where emotions bowed to reason, where stillness commanded more authority than the loudest outcry. You recognized them now, the ones who attempt to storm your calm. You see the patterns before they can unfold, the veiled insults, the manipulative compliments, the scripted remorse, and you welcome their attempts, for each failure fortifies your citadel. You are no longer prey. You are the apex of the hunt, the predator that chooses not to strike unless it serves your intent. You hold all the cards by offering none. In the final analysis, they can only gaze at you with the vacant frustration of an audience, watching an unbreakable statue. They search for the sign you're human, but find none. They crave the spark that would ignite their control, but you remain an ember no clownish flame can reach. You are the 0 point of their strategy, the place where energy is neither given nor lost, but contained and converted into unassailable force. They will carry this lesson forward, each future attempt tinged with the memory of their failure. They will hesitate before pressing you for a reaction, haunted by the silent void you maintain. And in that hesitation, you reign. They'll search for cracks in your calm, hoping to slip inside the fortress you erected. But there are none. You've distilled yourself to pure resolve, a singular truth that cannot be diluted by their pleas or polished by their apologies. In the echo of your silence, they hear the verdict. You answered only to yourself. No longer will you chase their validation or bend to their narratives. You've seen how they weaponize your compassion, how they craft apologies to enslave your conscience. You walked away from that trap, and in doing so, you reclaimed every fragment of your dignity. Your power isn't built on their acknowledgement. It's forged in the absence of need. From this moment on, you move with unspoken authority. Every glance you cast, every word you withhold, carries the weight of your sovereignty. They will learn to respect the stillness you wield, not as a lullaby, but as an instrument of consequence. They'll learn that crossing you invites a reckoning they cannot predict. In the end, there is no reconciliation, only recognition that you are no longer theirs to command. You've transcended the chaos they bred, not by battling it, but by refusing to respond. Your calm is your dominion, your detachment, the final arbiter. If this resonates the moment you realized that silence could outlast every insult and every hollow apology, subscribe and share your breakthrough in the comments.